I used to think betrayal would arrive like a loud thing. A slammed door. A shouted confession. A note left in the middle of the table with my name written on top of it in a hand I no longer recognized. But what happened to me came quietly. It came with a signature. It came with my address on paper. It came with a due date. And by the time I understood what had been done, it was already growing interest. My mother was good with quiet things. Good with rearranging a room so you could not tell anything had moved. Good with smiles that looked warm from a distance and empty up close. Good with saying, "Don't worry about it," in a tone that made worrying feel rude. When I was younger, I mistook that for strength. I thought she was the kind of woman who could carry everything without letting anyone see the weight. I thought that was love. Now I know there are people who do not carry things. They hide them. They bury them under the names of the people who trust them most. We were not rich. We were not the kind of poor that made headlines. We were the kind that gets quiet in grocery stores. The kind that checks prices twice and still puts one item back at the register. The kind that smiles at the bank teller even when the account balance makes your stomach drop. My mother knew how to make scarcity look temporary. She always said the same things. Just until next month. Just until the insurance comes through. Just until I get paid. Just until. That was her favorite phrase. A small bridge over a deep place. I was 23 when I first noticed something strange. Not because she told me. Not because she had the decency to confess. I noticed because a letter came in my name. It was thick. Official. The kind of envelope that feels expensive before you even open it. Inside was a notice about a loan payment. A missed payment. My name. My date of birth. My old address. And a balance that made my throat tighten. I stared at it for a long time. Long enough that the room around me started to feel unfamiliar. Long enough that I could hear the refrigerator humming in the kitchen like it was trying to say something. At first I thought it had to be a mistake. Some clerical error. Some stranger with the same name. Then I saw the last 4 digits of the bank account attached to the loan. They matched my mother's old account. I sat down without meaning to. The paper shook in my hands once. Then it went still. I remember thinking, very clearly, very stupidly, that there must be some explanation. Mothers do not do that. Not to their children. Not unless something else is wrong. That was my first mistake. I called the number on the letter. A woman with a flat voice confirmed the account. She confirmed the loan amount. She confirmed the missed payments. She confirmed that everything had been opened in my name 2 years earlier. 2 years. For 2 years this thing had been alive under my name, feeding on silence. Was there fraud? I asked. The woman paused in a way that felt rehearsed. The account was opened with identifying information that matches yours, she said. The application was submitted from your home address. My home address. Her home. I remember gripping the table so hard my fingers hurt. I remember asking who signed. I remember the woman saying, "There is a recorded signature," in the same tone someone might use to tell you the weather. A recorded signature. My chest went cold. I knew immediately that I had not signed it. I also knew, with the same clarity, that my mother had. When I was a kid, she used to handle every paper with strange confidence. School forms. Medical releases. Permission slips. She never asked where to sign. She never read things twice. She had this habit of flicking through documents like they were all the same thing. Bills. Notices. Contracts. She treated them all as obstacles between her and relief. Back then, I thought that was just adulthood. I thought adults lived in a world of forms and signatures and secrets that children were not meant to understand. Now I understand she had been practicing. I drove to her apartment that evening. I did not call first. I could not have answered if she had picked up. The hallway smelled like old paint and someone's dinner. Her door had a wreath on it that looked out of season. When she opened the door and saw my face, she knew immediately something was wrong. That was the part that disgusted me later. Not surprise. Recognition. "Why are you here?" she asked. Not, "What's wrong?" Not, "Are you okay?" "Why are you here?" I held up the letter. "What is this?" She looked at it once. Just once. Then she sighed like I was exhausting her on purpose. "Come inside," she said. That tone. That careful, calm tone. I had heard it when she wanted me to stop crying as a child. I had heard it when she wanted me to stop asking where money went. I had heard it when she wanted me to believe that worry was a character flaw. I stayed in the doorway. "Did you take out a loan in my name?" She did not answer right away. She set her keys down. She straightened a stack of mail on the table. She did everything except answer. "Just come inside," she said again. I asked her a second time. "Did you?" And then she did the thing I had seen her do my whole life. She made my question sound unreasonable just by looking at me. "Don't start," she said quietly. "Not here. Not here." As if there were a place where theft becomes acceptable. I stepped inside anyway. The apartment was small. Too clean in the wrong places. There was a dish rack with one bowl in it. A blanket folded over the couch with military precision. Everything looked arranged to say nothing needed attention. She asked me to sit down. I did not. I asked her again, and this time my voice cracked. "Did you open a loan in my name?" She rubbed her forehead. "It was temporary." That was all she said at first. Temporary. My name, apparently, could be borrowed like a spoon. I laughed once, but there was no humor in it. Temporary? She finally looked at me. I was going to pay it back. "When?" I asked. "When I got back on my feet." "You didn't tell me." She frowned, as if I had accused her of something childish. "Because you would have overreacted." There it was. The old spell. The one she used to place over every ugly thing she had done. "You would have overreacted. You're too sensitive. I didn't want to worry you. I was protecting you." Protection. That word has ruined more lives than some people realize. I asked how much. She gave me an amount so large I thought I had misunderstood her. I asked again. She said it slower, almost annoyed that I had not absorbed it the first time. My body went numb in pieces. My hands. My jaw. The back of my neck. "Why?" I said. It was the only word I could find. She took a breath. "For the house." The house. Of course. Everything always came back to the house. The mortgage payments she could not make. The repairs she delayed. The taxes she forgot to mention until they became urgent. She looked almost offended that I was not grateful. I didn't have another choice. "You had choices," I said. "You had mine. You just used it." That shut her up for a second. Only a second. Then she said, "You live there too." As if that made it fair. As if I owed her my identity because I had grown up in her kitchen. I left before I said something that would become permanent. Outside, the night air felt sharper than it should have. I sat in my car with both hands on the wheel and stared at the steering column like it might tell me what kind of person I had become without noticing. I wanted to drive back inside. I wanted to scream. I wanted her to explain herself in a way that would let me keep loving her without feeling stupid. That was the worst part. Not the debt. Not the fraud. The part of me that still wanted permission to forgive her. The next morning I checked my credit report. Then I checked it again because I thought I had missed something. There it was. The loan. The late payments. Another smaller account I had never heard of. A utility balance. An old phone contract. My name attached to things I had never touched. It was like finding fingerprints on your own life. I called the credit bureau. I called the lender. I called a number from a consumer protection website and waited on hold long enough to start hating instrumental jazz. Everywhere I went, I heard the same careful vocabulary. Identity verification. Authorized user. Dispute process. Documentation required. Documentation. My mother had built a trap out of paperwork and patience. One woman told me I would need to file a fraud report if I believed the account had been opened without my consent. She said this like consent was a lamp you could just turn on after the fact. I asked whether a family member could have submitted the application. The woman on the line hesitated. That would still be unauthorized if they used your information without permission, she said. Without permission. That phrase sat heavy in my chest. When I told my mother I was filing a dispute, she called me within 5 minutes. I almost did not answer. I answered anyway. She did not say hello. She said, "Are you trying to destroy me?" The speed of that sentence made me cold. Not sorry. Not ashamed. Attacking. "I'm trying to fix what you did," I said. "You don't understand the situation. I understand it perfectly." "No, you don't." Her voice sharpened. "You think I did this to hurt you? Then why did you hide it?" Silence. That silence was answer enough. Then she said very carefully, "Because you would have made it about yourself." I had to pull the phone away from my ear. I remember staring at it in disbelief. There are insults that wound, and then there are insults that reveal the entire architecture of a person. She had taken my name, my credit, my future, and somehow I was still the selfish one. That night I did not sleep. I sat at my desk and spread the papers out in front of me. The notices. The statements. The screenshots from my credit report. I made a timeline on a legal pad because if I did not order it, the whole thing felt like a dream. 2 years ago, the first account. 18 months ago, the second. 1 year ago, the late payment. 6 months ago, a reminder letter I had never seen because she had been collecting my mail while I was between apartments. There it was. The hiding place had always been obvious. My own mother had been intercepting the evidence before it could reach me. I thought about all the times she'd said, "I forwarded something for you." I thought about the bills she said were junk. I thought about her finger tapping the kitchen counter while she told me not to make a scene. A scene. That was her favorite word for accountability. 3 days later, I met with a lawyer. The office was small and overbright. Everything in it looked designed to convince people that bad things could be organized into manageable folders. The lawyer listened without interrupting. That alone almost made me cry. When I finished, he leaned back and rubbed his chin. "This is serious," he said. "I know. If your mother signed your name or used your identity to obtain credit, that is identity theft and possibly fraud." The words sounded cleaner in his office than they had in my head. Identity theft. Fraud. There was no softer version of them. He asked whether I wanted to pursue criminal charges. I did not answer right away, because in that moment I could see both futures at once. In one, I did what I was supposed to do. I protected myself. I filed every report. I preserved every record. I let the system say the words that I could not say without shaking. In the other, I kept protecting her the way she had taught me to. I swallowed it. I fixed it quietly. I spent the next 10 years paying for her survival in pieces of my own life. I had lived the second future long enough already. So I nodded. The lawyer started listing documents. Police report. Affidavit. Copies of statements. Proof of address. He spoke in a measured voice, but I heard one thing underneath it. Once this begins, it does not stay private. When I got home, my mother was waiting outside my building. She sat in her car with the engine off, hands folded in her lap, as if she were the injured one. I stopped walking when I saw her. She got out slowly. She looked smaller than she had in my memory. That should have softened me. It did not. She said my name like it could still summon obedience. "I need to talk to you," she said. "There's nothing left to talk about." Her mouth tightened. "You went to a lawyer." It was not a question. I kept walking. She followed me. "I was going to tell you," she said. "When?" I did not stop. "After the collectors came? After my wages were garnished?" I was handling it. "No," I said. "You were hiding it." She laughed then. A tiny, bitter sound. "You think I wanted this?" I turned around so fast she stopped short. "You chose to use my name," I said. "You chose to lie to me for 2 years. You chose to let it grow." Her face changed. Not remorse. Calculation. Then she said the thing I had been dreading and expecting all at once. "If you do this," she said, "you'll destroy the family." The family. As if the family had not already been gutted and hidden in a folder somewhere under my name. I looked at her for a long time. She looked back at me with the kind of stillness that used to make me obey before I understood it for what it was. Finally I said, "You did that when you put my future on a loan." She went very quiet after that. Too quiet. In the days that followed, she called non-stop. She left voicemails that started with anger and ended with crying. She texted me paragraphs in which every sentence somehow blamed someone else. I ignored most of them. But one message caught my eye. "You need to understand what your father did." I read it 3 times. My father had not lived with us in years. He had drifted in and out of my life like weather. He had faults, certainly. But if she was reaching for him now, it meant the truth was still worse than she was willing to admit. I called her back. She answered on the first ring, as though she had been waiting with her phone in her hand. "What did you mean?" I asked. She exhaled. Long. Heavy. Then, in a voice I had never heard from her before, she said, "There are things you don't know about him." My stomach tightened. "There are things you don't know about all of us," she said. That was the moment the story changed shape. Not because I forgave her, not because I believed her, but because I understood she had not taken that loan in a vacuum. There was a chain behind it. There always is. The house. The unpaid debts. The arguments I had been too young to understand. The missing mail. The nights she said she was sorting things out, while I pretended not to hear her crying in the kitchen. My mother had not simply stolen from me. She had built a whole private emergency out of my life, and then waited to see whether I would call it love. I sat on the edge of my bed and looked at the timeline again. One account. Then another. Then a missing notice from a bank I had never dealt with. Then the old phone contract. Then the utility bill. It was not random. It was preparation. It was testing what she could get away with. And somewhere in all of it, she had decided that my silence was part of the budget. The next day, I found the folder she had hidden in the back of the hall closet when I was a teenager. I had not touched it in years. Inside were old tax forms, insurance notices, and envelopes opened along the seams. There were letters addressed to me from years ago. Some from banks. Some from school. Some from a collection agency I had never known existed. She had been intercepting things far longer than I realized. The oldest letter was from when I was 19. It warned of an account opened in my name for a small purchase at a store I had never visited. My hands went numb around the paper. 19. That meant the loan had not been the first time. It meant she had learned long before then that I was easy to use, or worse, that I was easy to hide. I took the folder to my lawyer. He went through it line by line, expression tightening with every page. "This is bigger than the loan," he said at last. "I know." He nodded once, then tapped the edge of a statement. "This suggests a pattern." A pattern. A word so neat it almost sounded harmless. But patterns are just crimes that have learned to repeat themselves. He told me to keep every message, every letter, every call log. He told me not to speak to her alone anymore. He told me very gently that family members who commit fraud often escalate when they realize the lie is ending. That stayed with me. Escalate. It sounded like weather again. Like something coming over the horizon. That night my mother sent me one last message. "Meet me tomorrow. I'll tell you everything." I stared at the screen for a long time. There was no apology in it. No admission. Only a promise. And even that sounded like a trap wrapped in tissue paper. I did not answer right away. I looked at the folder on my desk. I looked at the letter from the lender. I looked at the credit report with my name stamped all over damage I had never agreed to carry. Then I typed 4 words. "No more private meetings." Her response came almost instantly. That scared me more than anger would have. "You don't know who else is involved." I read that sentence until the letters blurred. Then I sat back very slowly in my chair. Who else is involved? Not who was involved. Not who helped. Not who knew. Who else is involved? And just like that, the debt stopped feeling like the center of the story. It became the surface. The visible wound. Something deeper was moving underneath it. I wanted to ignore the message. I wanted to believe it was only another manipulation. But the memory of her voice made my skin tight. There had been fear under it. Real fear. The kind people hide when they are no longer in control of the story they built. So I checked the old folder one more time. In the back, behind the tax papers, I found something folded into the shape of a receipt. It was not a receipt. It was a handwritten note. My mother's handwriting. "If they ask, you knew." My throat closed so fast I had to set the paper down. If they ask. Not if I ask. Not if you ask. If they ask. Someone else had already been looking for answers. Someone else had already started asking questions about the paper trail she had left behind. And my mother, for the first time in my life, sounded afraid that the wrong names might come up. I folded the note back up with shaking hands. Then I called my lawyer and told him I had to move faster. Outside, the street was quiet. Too quiet. I looked down at my phone again and saw one final missed call from a number I did not recognize. No voicemail. Just the number. And under it, a text. "Do not meet your mother alone." I stared at that text until the screen dimmed. Do not meet your mother alone. Not an explanation. Not a name. Just a warning, clean and spare, as if someone had already tried to teach me the cost of not listening. I called the number back. It rang once, then went dead. I tried again. Nothing. There are moments when silence feels accidental, and moments when it feels arranged. This was arranged. I slept badly that night. Not because I was tired. Because every time I closed my eyes, I saw paper. Forms. Signatures. My name written in ink that was never mine. And underneath all of it, the same question kept returning like a pulse I could not stop feeling. Who else is involved? The next morning, I went to the police station with my lawyer. The building smelled like old coffee and wet coats. Fluorescent lights hummed above us in a way that made everything feel slightly unreal. I had imagined this moment 100 times, and in every version I was stronger. In every version I was calm. In every version I said the words with a steady voice and did not feel my hands shaking as I held the folder against my chest. The truth was uglier. I could barely sit still. Every time someone walked past the interview room door, my stomach tightened. The officer who took my statement was young, careful, and tired in the way some people get when they have already heard too much from strangers. He asked me to start from the beginning. So I did. I told him about the first letter, the missed payment, the account, the way my mother admitted it like she was confessing to buying milk without telling me. When I said she had used my identity, the officer did not react the way I expected. He just wrote it down. That almost made it worse. No shock. No drama. Just the brutal calm of record-keeping. My lawyer slid the folder across the table. Bank statements. Old mail. The note in my mother's handwriting. The officer paused when he saw the note. If they ask, you knew, he read quietly. I watched his face change by degrees. Not to surprise. To attention. Who is they? He asked. That is what I need to find out, I said. It took 3 days before anyone called back with something useful. During those 3 days, my mother texted me 14 times. The messages got stranger each time. First they were angry, then pleading, then strangely formal, as if she had realized emotion was no longer working and had switched to management language. We need to resolve this privately. There is more at stake than you realize. You are being manipulated. Then finally, you need to trust me one last time. I read that line and felt something in me go very still. One last time. That was how she framed all her failures. As temporary. As an exception. As the final stretch before things became good again. The call from the detective came on a Thursday afternoon. Rain was hitting the window in thin, steady lines. He asked if I could come in again. His voice had changed. Less routine. More careful. When I arrived, he closed the door behind me and looked down at a thin stack of papers. We found something, he said. I sat without realizing I had moved. He turned the pages slowly. Your mother was not the only person signing financial documents in your name. I stared at him. He said, There's evidence of a second set of submissions. My mouth went dry. Second set? He nodded once. Different applications, different contact numbers, different IP addresses. Some of the paperwork suggests a broker was involved. A broker. Not just a mother in panic. Not just a woman hiding behind excuses. Something organized. Who? I asked. We're still tracing it, he said. But your mother's note makes more sense now. I looked at him, waiting. He lowered his voice. We believe someone warned her that if the accounts were examined too closely, other names would come up. Other names. My skin prickled. I did not tell him that my mother had hinted at my father. I did not tell him that a part of me had already started thinking about every adult in my life who had ever held a key, a document, a password, a copy of my records. Because suddenly the story was no longer only about debt. It was about inheritance. About the kind of ruin people hand down when they have nothing else left to give. The detective asked whether I had ever noticed strange mail, unfamiliar phone calls, anything that suggested another person had access to my information. And then, very slowly, I remembered the calls. Blocked numbers when I was younger. Messages that hung up after one ring. A man's voice once, low and impatient, asking for my mother by name before I was old enough to understand why it frightened me. At the time, she had snatched the phone from my hand and said it was a wrong number. Now I was no longer sure she had believed that herself. The detective left the room for a minute. My lawyer leaned toward me and said, "You need to prepare for this to spread." Spread. That was another clean word for something ugly. It meant paper trails, interviews, people calling my name in rooms where I was not present. It meant family members hearing about things they had never wanted to hear. It meant my mother losing control over the version of events she had kept carefully arranged for years. I did not answer right away, because part of me was still mourning the simple life I had thought I had. Not a happy life, just a legible one. One where the bad things had names and the good things were not secretly poisoned.